Introducing the ACORN podcast, your voice in rural development. We're here to empower and inspire young changemakers, policymakers, practitioners, and beneficiaries throughout Europe. Join us as we unite the diverse groups that shape the future of rural development together. Get ready for a dynamic podcast that amplifies your voice in our shared mission. Welcome to the ACORN podcast.
Hello and welcome to an episode of ACORN. With me today is Jeanette Borch. She is the founder of Maya Foundation and a lecturer on agriculture and rural policy. Hi, Jeanette.
Hi.
So can you tell us a little about your background and how you got involved in rural youth development?
I studied and worked in agriculture for quite some years, and over the past 10 years I've been volunteering in the Maya Foundation. So the crux of the Maya Foundation is rural youth.
What are some of the key challenges that rural youth face in terms of accessing opportunities for entrepreneurship and leadership?
The fact that Malta is a small country and we are quite overpopulated, we have different challenges that other countries face. For example, the long distances. We do not have that challenge. However, there are other challenges since we might have too many people in a very small place. For example, land use issues are amongst the most important, and it's very, very difficult, almost impossible, to access land if you do not have a farming family, basically. However, in entrepreneurial issues, there might be other opportunities that are not strictly tied to land. So there are challenges, but there are also opportunities being a small country.
Of course. Could you tell us about a specific success story where a young person in a rural area was able to create a thriving business or initiative?
Actually, there are several success stories, and that makes us very positive for the future, because many people stop and limit themselves to speak about the challenges. But I know quite a number of young people, even due to the studies I've done with young farmers, that take their family business a step further, and rather than continuing on the same products that their family produced, they tended to diversify or set up something that is more innovative. They encompass the world of marketing, for example, and social media. It might seem that marketing and diversifying the produce might not be such innovative, but when you look at the local context and see how traditional our agriculture is, there are many success stories that have delved into products. For example, if it's sheep milk, someone doing diversified products from sheep milk. If it's fruits, processing the fruits in terms of value added.
How important do you think mentorship and support networks are in helping rural youth succeed in their entrepreneurial endeavors?
I think mentoring is very important. I see a big difference from youth that have a very supportive family and supportive partners, for example, rather than youth that have family members that prefer directing them to have a fixed job. As we know, entrepreneurship requires having that flexibility and not maybe being tied to a 9-to-5 schedule. And obviously the people who are more adventurous and are allowed to be more adventurous are usually more successful in entrepreneurship and innovation.
So it's about the support system and making sure that you're allowed to sway from the conventionalities to pursue it.
Exactly.
Great. What are some innovative strategies or programs that you've seen that effectively promote rural development and empower young people?
For sure, it's the Common Agricultural Policy. Malta benefits from quite some funds being a European member state, and this obviously through the European policy there would be funds available for young people and every stakeholder in the rural sector. There was a particular measure for young farmers from which many, about 60 I think, young farmers could benefit to enter the sector, which I think it will be available also in the future. But there were other funds directed to entrepreneurship and innovation and processing and marketing. I know cases that have delved into beer, for example, into processed products that were not so common before, like soap making, for example. And all this is within the philosophy of EU funding and giving the funds to people who want to do something that is economically long-term.
So speaking about this innovation and creativity and processing, how do you think technology and digital platforms play a role in bridging the gap for the rural youth and provide them with access to resources and markets?
I think technology nowadays is something that you really can't avoid. And the people who harness technology have a better chance in the market. For example, I've seen farmers who set up online platforms for their clients to buy their products. I think social media changed the face of agriculture in Malta, because the minute that young people started using social media, they started having a face to their product and a face for themselves out in the market. So, for example, if we two are talking about where to buy fruits and vegetables, and I can send you a couple of links of people who sell their produce directly, well, the technology is helping to bridge the gap between the consumer and the farmer or the young person who has a business in the rural sector.
Fantastic. It facilitates things.
Exactly.
Are there any particular skills or training programs that you believe are essential for rural youth who are interested in starting their own business?
Definitely soft skills help, because having to deal with clients and developing cooperative businesses, for example, requires a great deal of soft skills. Nonetheless, the more you know about how technology works, how about the social media platforms work, how, I don't know, to manage an online shopping system, it all helps. And I think there should be more training about how to harness this technology at a small business level, because all our businesses are very, very small.
So what are the unique advantages and strengths that rural areas possess when it comes to fostering entrepreneurship and leadership among young people?
First of all, rural areas in Malta are in close proximity to urbanized areas. So the fact that a farmer, let's say, is in Mellieħa, in reality, he or she is not that far away from the areas that are concentrated with people, with clients, with potential clients. Also, the fact that there is a demand for local food, although we import blessings from everywhere, we do have a demand for local produce, because the people know that the local product is fresh, it's less industrialized compared to other products that come from other countries, and be it vegetables, meat, cheese, wine and whatnot, the local produce has a good standard when compared to the other products. So the fact that in a country we are close to everywhere, and our land still produces bountiful stuff, I think young farmers and youth still have opportunities to market products related to food and services.
Indeed. So from your experience, what role do you think government and policymakers play in creating an enabling environment for rural youth development?
The government always has a crucial role. First of all, certain problems related to public goods, for example, cannot be solved by an individual, like water, like land issues. They are always issues that have to be treated by the government as priorities. And obviously all the changes, the legislation and the policies finally affect the stakeholders, including the young people that potentially have a future in the rural sector. So there always has to be a good channel of communication and sensitivity towards the issues that make young people's lives improve or regress.
Are there any specific examples of policies or initiatives that have successfully supported rural youth entrepreneurship and leadership?
The funding is always a blessing because the people who want to invest can access this additional financial support. On the other hand, any initiative that helps the farmers to access the funds or, for example, improve the situation at a local level or at a farm level are very welcomed. Obviously, we need more. We have a lot of inconsistencies in the system, a lot of problems that haven't been addressed for years on end. So it's up to government to take up these problems and take the bull by the horns.
Indeed, there's always room for improvement.
There's always room for improvement.
So how can rural communities leverage their local resources and assets to create sustainable economic opportunities for young people?
Young people have an aptitude for entrepreneurship and innovation. And I think what we're lacking is cooperation, because one person is too small to make a change sometimes, although we've seen young people who are really doing a name for their own selves because they are changers in their own environment. But I think cooperation can really give us that cutting edge to address the needs that are currently too big for one person to tackle. And in fact, that's why the Maya Foundation has been set up, so that at least there's a concerted effort, there's a common voice, and young people can network with each other and even share their own problems, because sometimes sharing the problems and voicing concerns, even by a simple email to the concerned authority or person, makes a great difference rather than fighting problems alone.
Of course, we can't all be movers and shakers.
Exactly.
But we need to have a support system, as you were saying.
Definitely. And NGOs play a very crucial role in this regard.
So how do you think partnership between different stakeholders, such as these NGOs or businesses or educational institutions, contribute to the rural youth development?
NGOs have already proved to be game changers with regard to cooperation. In fact, even the Maya Foundation has been collaborating with NGOs in the environment sector and the social justice sector, so that the problems and the opportunities in agriculture don't remain in the agricultural sector, but also spread a bit out in the community. But there can be more cooperation even amongst the private sector and NGOs, for example, or the private sector and institutions, so that good practices, for example, are put forward so that others can take them up.
So what role does education play in empowering the rural youth and preparing them for entrepreneurship and leadership?
Education is everything. It always starts from there. Be it children, be it adolescents, be it youth, be it young adults. I think education is something that can open up your mind to improve. That self-improvement comes from education and the thirst of knowing more. And there's a lot to know about. Someone cannot wake up in the morning and say, okay, I want to be a farmer. Okay, I want to be a rural entrepreneur. There's a lot of knowledge. There's a lot of skills to be learned. There's a lot of people to network with so that practices can be learned. So I think education is something worth investing in.
And you end up getting to know what you don't know through
exactly. There's
education.
Always, you never know enough.
Exactly. Exactly. So what are some misconceptions or stereotypes about rural youth that you've encountered, and how do you think we can challenge and overcome them?
I think the biggest misconception that I've encountered that there aren't young farmers in Malta. And I keep hearing it, although it's changing a bit over 10 years, we've seen it change a bit. People keep telling us, no, there aren't young farmers, the land is being abandoned, most of the land is being built. That doesn't mean that there aren't young farmers who are really upset about the situation and who are not working amongst their families in their own private business. So we have a bit more than 1,000 young people who are actively involved on farms. And I think they are the future of our rural sector. So these 1,000 people are crucial for having rural areas active in the future. Another misconception is about females, for example. We know how much females are being empowered in local communities through various initiatives, locally and European. And one of the misconceptions is that females do not want to partake in agricultural jobs, when in reality, females are very much at the core of rural families. They manage the household, they manage the finance of the farms, they also try to keep things together in their own way. So I think there's a lot of empowering to be done.
Indeed, indeed. Now, speaking about these young women, what are the specific challenges or barriers you think that they face?
Barriers are numerous. We could talk about them for hours on end. But Malta has been facing land use issues, harsh land use issues. So without land, you can't really practice agriculture. Having said that, there are also a number of rural services, like rural tourism services, for example, in which young people can partake to add value to their land and even to add income to their already existing farms.
Okay. Can you share an example of a youth-led initiative in a rural area that has had a positive impact on the community as a whole?
I think there were various initiatives. For example, tree planting has taken a different leap in Malta because the general public is very much in favor of green open spaces. And I think various young people, not only farmers, have engaged in activities that embellish our rural areas. But there are other initiatives that maybe are at a local business level that try to improve the quality of the products, or maybe the image of the local produce at a local level. Sometimes we hear about issues like animal welfare, like pesticide use, and they might not be all truthful or positive for the image of local produce. Well, in reality, there are farmers that speak up for themselves and talk about the product, talk about the great lengths they take to ensure that the product is safe and genuine. So I think initiatives that bring about the good aspect of local produce have been numerous, as I said, on social media, since farmers have taken the plunge and spoken to the news, for example, to journalists, and spoke up on social media about this.
How can rural youth development contribute to overall sustainable development in these rural areas?
There are various aspects that can be tackled in sustainable development. One thing that comes in mind is the aspect of health. Since I work in the agri-sector, food is very much an essential issue for health. And even the environment. So any agricultural product is a product of the land or the sea. So taking care of the land and improving the land rather than depleting it is a crucial component of how the planet can be cared for.
Are there any specific cultural or social factors in rural areas that need to be considered when designing programs or initiatives for youth development?
Yes, I think culture and social aspects are an integral part, since rural areas are communities. So the background they have, the interactions between them are very important. So I think the strong community aspects we have in rural areas, the villages, their characteristics, the language is essential to create initiatives.
What advice would you give to young people in rural areas who aspire to become entrepreneurs or leaders?
I think one of the an advice that comes to mind is to work hard and network a lot. Because rural areas, although very close to urban areas in Malta, young people might tend to stay in their own community. However, getting to know more people and being involved in local initiatives is very important to get a wider overview of what are the opportunities out there. So the more you go out there and the more you work and involve yourself, the better it is.
And lastly, Jeanette, what are your hopes for the future of rural youth development, and how do you see it evolving in the coming years?
I think hope is the last to die. So what I hope for is that we continue seeing a good vibe from the young people to involve themselves in the rural sector, rather than stopping and limiting themselves and saying, okay, we have lots of problems, this can't be changed, and they take a more front role in raising their concerns. At the moment, NGOs, as the Maya Foundation, always raise the concerns depending on the issue. However, if more young people take the floor, they would be the protagonists of their own realities.
Thank you for your time, Jeanette.
Thank you.
It's been very interesting. And thank you to our listeners.
Thanks for joining us on this ACORN podcast. Be sure to follow our social media channels at ACORNproject EU on TikTok and Twitter. Thanks for listening.